At 24, with no home of her own and down to her last $60, Clara inherited a dusty, long-forgotten 1902 apothecary shop that everyone else called worthless. Her wealthy siblings greedily divided the grand estates, laughing as they left her with nothing but a crumbling ruin. In the quiet lawyer's office, she accepted the heavy brass key, a solitary token of a forgotten family legacy. Leaving the cold city behind, she boarded a train bound for the rolling hills and quiet valleys of rural Virginia. She stepped off into a sleepy town where autumn leaves drifted lazily across the quiet, sun-drenched Main Street. At the end of the block stood the narrow brick building, its weathered facade hidden in the afternoon shadows. Faded gold leaf lettering on the cracked window pane still proudly read, "Apothecary, established 1902." With trembling hands, she fit the heavy iron key into the rusted lock, wondering what secrets lay waiting for her inside. The heavy oak door groaned loudly on its hinges, protesting decades of silence as it slowly swung open to the outside world. A warm shaft of autumn sunlight pierced the gloom, illuminating millions of dust motes dancing in the quiet air. The air was thick with the scent of dried lavender, ancient paper, and the sweet, lingering ghost of peppermint. She stepped across the threshold, her boots clicking softly on the wide, hand-hewn pine floorboards of the shop. Setting down her worn leather suitcase, she realized this dusty room was now the only home she had in the world. Towering wooden shelves lined the walls, stretching up toward the high ceiling like silent, empty bookshelves. Rows of cobalt blue and amber glass bottles sat in the shadows, their surfaces coated in a thick velvet of dust. Delicate cobwebs hung like fine lace in the dark corners, completely undisturbed by the passage of time and changing seasons. A long, rustic oak counter dominated the room, its surface scarred by the transactions of a bygone generation. Resting quietly on the counter was a massive, leather-bound ledger, its cover gray with the thick dust of half a century. She gently brushed her fingers across the worn leather cover, leaving clean tracks in the thick, gray dust of the past. Opening the heavy book, she found pages filled with elegant, faded ink recipes for remedies long since forgotten. Each handwritten line told a beautiful story of healing, written by the grandfather who had built this place with pure love. The deep silence of the shop felt like a protective embrace, shielding her from the harshness of the outside world. She walked slowly behind the counter, imagining the generations of hopeful faces that had once stood before it. On a low shelf, she discovered a set of delicate brass scales, which remained still perfectly balanced despite the passing years. Looking through the dusty window, the quiet street outside seemed worlds away from her brand-new, secret apothecary sanctuary. A sudden wave of doubt washed over her, leaving her to wonder if she truly had the strength to rebuild this life. Her eyes caught a small, framed photograph resting on a shelf, showing a kind man standing proudly by the counter. She wiped the glass clean, revealing the warm, encouraging smile of the grandfather she had never really known. The afternoon sun shifted, bathing the entire room in a rich, golden light that made the old bottles glow like gems. Below the counter, a grid of tiny wooden drawers still held handwritten labels for various herbs and roots from long ago. Pulling one drawer open, she found it filled with dried rose petals, still holding a faint, sweet whisper of bygone summers. She held the petals in her palm, realizing that the beauty of this place had not died. It had only been sleeping. A quiet determination filled her heart. This shop was not a worthless ruin, but a priceless chest of memories. With a deep breath, she rolled up her sleeves, ready to sweep away the decades of neglect and start her life anew. In the corner, she found an old straw broom, its handle worn smooth by the hands of those who came before her. She began to sweep, sending clouds of dust into the bright sunbeams as she reclaimed the space inch by dusty, forgotten inch. Outside, a few curious townsfolk paused to look, surprised to see signs of life in the long-abandoned building. As evening approached, the setting sun painted the dusty windows in deep, warm shades of amber, glowing orange and gold. She closed the heavy wooden door and turned the key, locking out the cold night air and fully embracing her new sanctuary. Sitting by the warm glow of a single lantern, she knew the road ahead would be long, but she was finally home. As dawn broke over the rolling Virginia hills, a soft, warm light touched the weathered face of the old apothecary shop. Inside the quiet shop, The morning sun revealed the true scale of the dust and neglect that had settled over decades. Clara awoke to the cold morning air, looking around at the monumental task that lay ahead of her in the quiet room. With a bucket of fresh water and a worn broom, she prepared to reclaim the historic space from the passage of time. The first sweep of her broom sent thick clouds of gray dust dancing through the bright beams of autumn sunlight. Dried leaves from seasons past were swept away, clearing the threshold for a new beginning in the historic shop. She reached into the high corners, clearing away the thick, dusty cobwebs that had hung undisturbed for 40 long years. With every single stroke of her brush, the forgotten architecture of the ceiling began to show its face once again to her. Pausing to catch her breath, she watched the dust settle slowly in the warm, quiet air of this beautiful autumn morning. The front display windows were caked in years of heavy grime, completely blocking the view of the sleepy street outside. As she wiped the first glass pane, a brilliant beam of pure golden light cut through the dark interior of the dusty room. She washed the glass with steady, careful hands, slowly revealing the quiet, peaceful world of the small Virginia town outside. Warm autumn sunlight flooded the front room, illuminating the worn wooden floorboards with a rich, deep, and golden glow. From the street, the shop no longer looked abandoned, but rather like a place slowly waking from a long sleep. An elderly townsman paused on the wooden sidewalk, squinting through the clean glass with a look of disbelief. Two local women whispered quietly to one another, shaking their heads at the sheer foolishness of restoring the old shop. A passing carriage slowed down, its driver looking skeptically at the sudden, unusual activity in the old shop's doorway. Clara felt their doubtful gazes, but she kept her head down, focusing entirely on the restoration work before her. She turned her attention to the shelves, reaching for the first of many dusty glass apothecary bottles nearby. A deep cobalt blue bottle lay heavy in her hand, completely coated in a thick, dark layer of soot and forgotten local history. She lowered the glass into the warm, soapy water, watching the decades of accumulated grime dissolve in a single instant. Wiping it dry, the glass bottle gleamed with a brilliant blue light, as if waking up after a full century of cold darkness. One by one, she lined the clean vessels on a wooden table, where they caught the warm, bright rays of the sun. Amber and emerald bottles soon joined the row, glowing like precious gems in the quiet autumn afternoon light. She scrubbed the empty wooden shelves, removing the dark soot left behind by the old oil lamps of a bygone historical era. With care, she returned each clean bottle to its place, the glass reflecting the newly brightened and clean room space. The massive rustic wooden counter stood before her, its surface scarred by long years of hard use and neglect. She applied a thick layer of homemade beeswax polish, breathing in the sweet, comforting scent of warm, natural honey. Her hands worked in steady, circular motions, rubbing the rich wax deep into the dry, thirsty grain of the old counterwood. Slowly, the dull wood began to shine, beautifully reflecting the golden autumn light pouring through the clean windows. The counter's rich mahogany tones returned, showing the true beauty that had been hidden under the thick layers of gray dust. Outside, a group of curious children stopped to watch, their eyes wide as they peered through the clean glass. Across the street, a local merchant stood with crossed arms, convinced the shop would close within a few days. Clara paused to drink some fresh water, looking at the incredible transformation she had achieved in just one busy morning. She swept the last pile of dirt and dried leaves out the front door, letting the cool autumn wind carry it all far away. Though still completely empty of medicine, the shop now breathed with a clean, welcoming warmth it had long lacked here. As the afternoon sun began to dip, long golden rays stretched beautifully across the newly polished wooden floorboards. The clean glass bottles resting on the wooden shelves glowed like precious jewels, catching the final warm light of the autumn day. Clara stood quietly behind the polished wooden counter, feeling a deep, quiet sense of pride in the home she was rebuilding here. As the twilight fell, the old apothecary shop stood clean and proud, serving as a beacon of quiet hope in the heart of the town. A new dawn broke over the quiet Virginia valley, painting the old wooden apothecary in soft, warm shades of amber. Inside the quiet shop, the cool morning air carried the faint, sweet scent of dried lavender and aged pine wood. Stepped slowly behind the heavy counter, her eyes tracing the worn grain where her father had once stood. Although the shelves were clean, she knew that the deepest, darkest corners of the shop still held decades of forgotten dust. With a soft, quiet sigh, she gathered her cleaning cloths, determined to restore every hidden inch of the old, historic space. Kneeling down on the cold wooden floorboards, she looked beneath the massive oak counter into the deep shadows. The cramped space below was dark and dusty, untouched by either the broom or the warm sunlight for more than half a century. Reached deep into the darkness, her fingers gently brushing away the thick cobwebs that clung to the rough-hewn wood. As she swept the dusty floor beneath the counter, the scraping sound echoed softly throughout the silent, empty apothecary room. Her damp cloth caught on a rough wooden edge near the back support, revealing a hidden seam that felt unusual to her touch. Peering closer with a small lantern, she noticed the wood grain of one lower panel did not align with the rest. It was a deliberate seam, carefully and cleverly concealed behind the heavy structural beams of the main drawer assembly. Pressed her fingers firmly against the edge of the panel, feeling a slight give in the ancient timber. She quickly realized this was not a simple backing board, but a hidden partition built long ago with quiet, secret intentions. With a small iron tool from the hearth, she began to gently pry at the stubborn, dust-sealed wooden seam in the dark corner. The old wood groaned in soft protest, releasing a small cloud of fine, dry sawdust that smelled of aged cedar. Worked slowly, careful not to splinter the historic craftsmanship that her family had left behind here. With a sudden, soft click, the panel shifted forward, revealing a dark, mysterious recess hidden deep within the old desk. She pulled the loose board away, her heart beating much faster in the quiet, shadow-draped corners of the old apothecary shop. Behind the panel lay a narrow, secret drawer, untouched by time and completely shielded from the outside world. Reached slowly into the narrow opening, her hand trembling slightly as she felt the cold metal of a hidden box. She carefully pulled the heavy object out, revealing a weathered, rusted tin box covered in a very thick layer of old dust. The tin box was surprisingly heavy for its size, its metal surface showing the deep orange patina of many passing years. She set the box gently upon the polished counter, where the bright morning light caught its rough, rusted metal edges, swiped the thick dust from the lid, revealing faint, hand-carved initials that belonged to her beloved grandfather. With a gentle pry of her fingers, the rusted latch finally gave way, opening the old box with a sharp, loud metallic creak. Inside the tin, resting right on top, was a worn leather recipe book, its edges frayed and darkened by years of old oil. Directly beneath the book lay a bundle of old family letters, bound tightly together with a faded, dusty blue silk ribbon. Beside the letters rested a small, tarnished brass key and a few antique copper coins dating from a long-forgotten era. Picked up the copper coins, feeling their cool weight and the smooth, worn faces of long-dead presidents. She set the copper coins aside and gently touched the soft silk ribbon, wondering whose hands had tied it so very long ago. The small brass key gleamed faintly in the warm sunlight, a silent promise of secrets yet to be unlocked in this shop. Carefully lifted the worn leather book, the scent of old paper and dried herbs quickly filling the warm, quiet air. She opened the cover to find her father's elegant, sweeping handwriting gracing the very first yellowed page of the book. The ink was faded, but still legible, detailing precise measurements of wild roots, tree bark, and colorful mountain flowers. As she slowly turned the pages, she realized these were not common recipes, but unique, long-forgotten herbal remedies. Each page held a cure for ailments of the chest and mind, written with the deep, profound wisdom of a true master healer. Read the detailed notes, quickly realizing the immense historical and medical value of her father's life work. These lost formulas could bring comfort to the valley once more, reviving a family legacy she thought was gone forever. Holding the book close to her chest, she looked out the window, ready to bring the old apothecary back to life. As the crisp autumn leaves drifted past the dusty window, the quiet valley prepared for a new chapter of healing. Inside the old apothecary, the rich scent of dried lavender and aged paper hung thick in the quiet morning air. Held the worn leather journal close to her heart, knowing its fragile pages held the secrets of the past. She knew that to save her family's legacy, she would have to share these forgotten herbal remedies with the entire world. A sudden, quiet knock at the heavy oak door broke the silence, signaling the arrival of long-awaited visitors. Two distinguished representatives from the National Historical Society stepped into the dim, dusty wooden shop. They were accompanied by a renowned scholar from the Heritage Pharmacy Group, who was eager to examine the old archives, welcomed them with a gentle nod, her heart beating quickly with a complex mixture of nervous anxiety and quiet hope. The visitors looked around the room, marveling at the beautifully preserved state of the century-old apothecary. With slow, careful hands, gently placed the heavy, handwritten recipe book onto the sunlit wooden counter of the shop. The lead historian put on a pair of white cotton gloves, treating the ancient volume with the utmost reverence. As the heavy cover creaked open, the rich, comforting scent of dried herbs and old ink slowly drifted up into the sunlit room. The scholars leaned in close, their eyes scanning the detailed botanical formulas written by his father. They turned the dusty pages slowly, recognizing rare, historic combinations of wild ginseng, black cohosh, and elderberry. For hours, the only sound in the shop was the soft rustle of paper and the slow ticking of the old wall clock. The Heritage Pharmacy representative looked up at her, his expression one of profound awe and complete, utter disbelief. He solemnly declared the old book to be a priceless treasure of early American botanical medicine and Appalachian history. Felt a warm tear slip down her cheek, realizing that her father's life work was finally being recognized at last. The historians explained that these formulas could bridge the gap between ancient folklore and modern science. They proposed a formal partnership to preserve the fragile archive and share its deep, ancient wisdom with the entire world. The society offered to fully fund the restoration of the building, keeping its historic character fully intact. It would not just be a museum, but a living shop where these traditional remedies could be crafted once again. Signed the agreement with a trembling hand, knowing she was securing her family's rightful place in local history. Within just a few weeks, the quiet road outside the old apothecary bustled with the happy sounds of carpenters and painters. The weathered wooden sign was carefully restored, its beautiful gold lettering shining brightly in the warm, golden autumn sun. Inside the shop, the dusty shelves were polished until the dark oak wood gleamed with a rich, warm, and inviting luster. Each antique glass bottle was carefully washed and returned to its place, catching the warm autumn light like colorful jewels. Fresh bundles of lavender, sage, and rosemary were hung from the ceiling, filling the shop with sweet fragrance. The community watched in wonder as the forgotten corner of their historic town was slowly brought back to life. On the morning of the grand reopening, a soft mist rolled over the hills, welcoming a beautiful new beginning. The doors finally opened to a crowd of eager neighbors, curious to see the treasures hidden inside for so many long years. Young children marveled at the old brass scales, while the elders fondly recalled the sweet remedies of their childhoods. Stood proudly behind the wooden counter, her heart overflowing with deep gratitude for the town's wonderful support. The apothecary had become much more than a simple shop. It was now a true sanctuary of healing, heritage, and deep hope. Her father's legacy was finally secure, preserved for many generations to come, in the very heart of this quiet valley. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the shop, knew her long journey was finally complete. The old wooden apothecary would stand for many years to come, a beautiful testament to the enduring power of memory and love. If you felt the warmth of this forgotten story, please subscribe to join us on our journey down the quiet road. Please like this video to help preserve these tales of heritage, and share your own family memories in the comments below. Thank you for wandering with us today, and may you always find true comfort in the quietest places of the human heart.